Ready? Mark, let us know when you're ready to go. Okay, we're ready to go. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September 20th Special Council meeting. This is an open session meeting as an information session to discuss strategic planning for the City of Belleville, and it's being called under Section 5.5, Subsection 2 of the Procedural Bylaw. And so I will call the meeting to order and note that we are in attendance. Councillor Malette and Councillor Councillor McCaw are not in attendance. I'll ask if anyone has any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move to cover off a number of items that will not be dealt with today's meeting. We won't deal with item number 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8A, 8B, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And for members of the public who are watching, the agenda is posted online under the agenda and minutes section of the website, and but there is no report that is associated with that today. So we'll move to item 8, Committee of the Whole. A motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the Chair. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? Carried. So we will move to item 8C, and these items will be dealt with individually. So welcome. This is a strategic planning process which we started in 2019. It was one of the victims of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so today CEO Bove will take us through the process, catch us up where we had left before, and then leave us a little bit of work until we reconvene. So Mr. Bove, I'll welcome you to the podium, and thank you for preparing for today's meeting, and we'll let you run through. There may be a need to take a brief recess. Mr. Bove is just waiting on some information, and we will. I'll turn it over to you now, sir.
All right, thank you, Richard, and welcome to Council and Executive Management team that are here today. As the Mayor said, we're picking up from where we left off. I guess over 2 years ago now. So what was the new council at the time, and I appreciate that Councillors Feeney and Alsap weren't around here, so this will be all new to you, but the other members of council hopefully will recall that there were a couple of sessions held in May and June of 2019. The May session was a discussion around sort of where we were at at what the priorities were, and those that were there will recall we had a presentation from the CIO at the time, and then also presentations from all the different department heads to outline the priorities for individual departments. And so there was a lot of good background information in that. We're not going to share that with you today. We're going to pick up where we left off following the June meeting that was held in 2019, and that was the meeting that was held in the fireplace room at the Couhane Sports and Wellness Center, and that was where Council started to review the strategic plan through the sections, and got through a fair bit of it. So today, what we want to do is go through where we got to as of June 17th, 2019, and finish up the review of the strategic themes and objectives, and then discuss where we go from here. Obviously, it's a little different circumstance at this point in the term of council. Typically, this is something we would do fresh with the new council. You're closer to the end of the term than the beginning of the term now, so we'll talk a little bit about how to approach what council has talked about today and previously. And housekeeping, certainly if there's any questions, please just stick your hand up. We want this, although it's a council meeting, we'll hopefully run it as informally as we can. We have staff here taking notes of all the discussions, so we'll be able to summarize that and provide it back to you following the meeting. So at that June 17th meeting, we got into the meat and potatoes of the plan. We talked about the vision and the mission statement in the plan, the core values and the strategic themes. And coming out of that, there was some discussion around changes to the vision that is in the strategic plan. And so as you can see on there, there was some discussion around providing changes that talked about making the city more inclusive and also working with partnerships and aiming for innovation, especially, I think. And that proposed wording was what was ultimately decided was appropriate going forward. As far as the mission statement goes, again, some minor tweaking to that was proposed and accepted by council. Around, I guess the changes were around the theme of accountability and citizen engagement, and providing not just efficient service to our customers and our citizens, but timely service as well. So those were the changes that were agreed to on the mission statement. The core values in the plan, the existing ones are noted there. Again, some minor adjustments to those that council felt more accurately reflected the direction that they think that the city should go in. And I think they're all appropriate. The strategic themes, so in the city's plan, these themes are outlined, and council will recognize these because we refer to them at the beginning of all of our council reports. So you'll see a small section at the beginning of council reports that reference how that particular issue or report ties back to those strategic themes. So at the last session in 2019, there was pretty good progress made on going through and reviewing those themes. The first theme was around infrastructure, and those existing objectives, there was no proposed changes to those at the time. So council felt that they still, as stated in the plan, represented how they see the city moving forward strategically as it relates to infrastructure. The second theme is industrial commercial development, and on each of these you'll see what the existing objectives are, and then below is the feedback that was provided from council related to that. So what we will do after we finalize all this is take those, take the feedback and work that into the objectives, and then have a finished product that council can then review, or a draft finished product, I guess. Residential development, the third objective, minor change there as it relates to housing. And I'll remind council, I believe the housing summit was fresh in everyone's mind at that point in time. So there was obviously lots of good discussion as it related to the housing summit. I think we have a mistake here. Anyway, the city center revitalization, there were some changes there. A good amount of the redevelopment had already been done on the downtown, and so there was some good discussion around that, and part of that was tying in those issues of tying the waterfront to the downtown, which has been I think a discussion that numerous councils over the years have turned their attention to, but at this point, we haven't made much progress in getting that connection between the two. There was some discussion around the environment as it relates to the city center and the city's commitment to the downtown. There's obviously, every council has a different opinion as to what the city's role should be and how they should support the downtown and to what degree. So I think this council, the direction was that the city is committed in any way they can to supporting and seeing the downtown be a success, because it is a representative of the city, and it represents the health and well-being of the city with a healthy and vibrant downtown. On culture and recreation, I see a couple of themes on this one and the next one. There's quite a few objectives there, and the feedback for both this and the next item, which was tourism and waterfront development, were both that we want to build into the plan an ability to work around the concept of making the city a destination for people. We don't want to be just the community that people travel through to go to Prince Edward County, for instance. We want people to have a reason to come to Belleville and enjoy everything that we have to offer here. So that was the feedback that came out quite clearly on both of those objectives. Where we are now, and I should say, tourism waterfront in that discussion, I think it was a pretty substantial discussion that we had, as I recall, and that was as far as we got at that last session. So, so going forward today, we want to review the objective of community health and safety and security, and get any feedback that council has on that, and anything that they see that needs to change based on current situations. And I appreciate that we're all in a little different situation than we were in 2019. Obviously, the world has changed quite a bit since then. So, you know, we're just here to listen to any feedback that council has as it relates to this particular issue and those existing objectives. Certainly the objectives that are there are high level and can be used given what's transpired in the last 18 months. But I'll throw it out there. Does anyone have any comments or things they would like to see changed or addressed as part of those existing objectives under this category?
Mr. Bove, I think it covers pretty much what we're doing now, and specifically, I think members of the health unit, so Councillor Sandison and Councillor Kelly, and then also those that are on Health and Human Services with Hastings County. Are there any projects or programs that you know of that don't fit, that are important for the city to have provided for our residents, that don't fit in these areas? You know, I think our efforts with respect to the physician recruitment program fall within this. The other things that we're looking at possibly doing and the other services. Councillor Alsop?
Thank you, Chair. I think the only thing that I might like to see in this is something regarding communication with the community and public information. You know, especially as it relates to the current health crisis we're going through. That's been certainly important for us over the last several months, and that would be something I could see adding to this list. But other than that, it's pretty comprehensive.
So when you're talking about communication, you're talking about making people aware of programs and supports that are there?
Yes, as well as emerging public health issues.
Yeah. Is this a good place to put that, Mr. Bove, or would we look at having our general communication You know,
Yeah,
I think, you know, Councillor Alsop's onto something in the sense of, you know, we want to make sure that people are aware, and certainly the 211 signage that we're putting up and other things that we're doing to bring people's attention, terrific. But at the same time, I also think, you know, we've really stepped up the city's communication with residents across everything. You know, we've let more people know about what we're doing, what our projects are, and whatnot. So I think it's sort of, we may want that to be one of our strategic themes is not just to do these things, but to be able to let people know, let the residents know what we've been doing and how it's been going.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Your Worship. And I don't want to pigeonhole us into, you know, we have to stick with these existing objectives. We can certainly add some too that council feels is warranted, and perhaps one that relates to communication generally and touches on the issues that Councillor Alsop mentioned and other communication requirements that the city has to and has probably done a much better job on over the last few years. You know, there's certainly an argument that can be warranted as its own strategic objective.
So maybe we'll put that on sort of that list of the parking list, and then we can come back to it. But we're on the right track, right, Councillor Alsop, in terms of...
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think as we get to talk a little more, we may find that this is, you know, communication and technology and different ways to communicate are also going to be important to be part of the city's portfolio. Anyone else on item H? Okay, well, let's move on to the next then. Environment.
So item I is the environment, strategic initiative, strategic objective. Obviously, there are a number of them there. There's probably many more that you could add in there. And any comments or direction at this time from council?
You know, again, I think it covers a lot of what we've been working on and what our plans would be for next year in this area. Does anybody have anything they want to ask about where it would fit?
I think a lot of the priorities that this council has initiated and worked on over the term are you know, they fit in there. And there's certainly nothing obvious that sticks out. The Green Task Force has moved a number of initiatives forward that support these objectives, and I'm sure there'll be some more over the next year as well.
Councillor Alsop?
Just wondering, like where a tree canopy policy would fit into these environmental objectives.
That's a good question. We certainly have done some work on that. Director Reed, or General Manager Reed, has worked on that, and I know that Director Ashton and his group are working on more related to the protection of the canopy and the enhancement of the canopy through new developments, so requirements for new subdivisions and new commercial industrial development in terms of tree planting and things like that. So the council will see more of that coming forward. It can certainly be added as an objective. I think it's, although we do hold our own in terms of tree planting, I think there's more to do in terms of protecting the existing, and obviously there's been challenges with some of the attacks on the trees from things like the ash borer and things like that, which has required the city to remove a number of trees. And we saw sort of the results and the outcome of that last weekend or the weekend before, where Quinte Conservation organized a large effort to plant 1,500 trees in the Stanley Park area, where a number of trees, mature trees, had to be removed try and protect other trees that were still viable, and I think there's certainly merit in having everything encompassing a tree protection and enhancement of the canopy included as an objective for sure.
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, more on the security of safe drinking water supply. I think we could possibly, I don't know where it fit in, but more on the information that comes from the Source Water Protection Committee on safe water and what they're doing to make sure there's safe water drinking in the areas of that, you know, in the Bay, in the Quinny Conservation Area, and maybe having that available that to let people know that at least the Source Water Protection is working towards making sure there's safe drinking water for everybody. I don't know whether that ties in of any
Yeah,
value.
well, I think that's part of the actions that we take. This is, right now, we're talking about our strategic
Okay.
initiatives, and certainly, you know, all the different organizations we work with help to deliver them. And I think what Councillor Alsap was getting at is saying, you know, do we need to specifically mention tree canopy somewhere? And I think, you know, where you're talking about protecting source water, but also dealing with issues like erosion and dealing with groundwater absorption and dealing with naturalized retention of naturalized areas in the city, all those are. Do you see them fitting somewhere else, Mr. Bove, or would there be? This would be a good additional objective to put in this category, because I think, you know, I said when we started this process, this is an excellent document. You know, we inherited, we're very fortunate to inherit this. A council put it together. It's got solid bones. And what we're talking about now is just making slight adjustments. But by and large, the direction of the document is still applicable. It's great. But I think this might be one of those adjustments we want to make. You know, obviously, there's a lot of things that that catch in here. Everything from electrification of transit, and also, you know, how we do development and those kinds of things. But is it time for us to include a physical environment reference in how we are committed to retaining and improving our physical environment? Tree canopy, source water protection, prevention of steps to take, prevention of erosion, as I said, groundwater absorption, making sure that we're minimizing the runoff. The new areas of the city that we're trying to keep in a more naturalized setting, including the extension of the Shirley Langer Trail. That's going to be a more naturalized area than other parts of Bayshore, but also the pollen, you know, the work the Green Task Force has been doing. And having that as a something with a little bit more of a strategic objective.
Yeah, I think that you know, that can be summarized. The existing ones are fairly general, and to Councillor Thompson's point on source water, you know, source water was, I'm not even sure it was on the radar when this document was created. So it's something that's come full circle since 2012 and been implemented across the region. So, you know, I think those are all good issues that we may be able to, if not create a separate objective, wordsmith a bit of the existing ones to include some of those things that are more current, and obviously, you know, the electrification of buses or the city's fleet in general. Those types of things can be looked at, and they would fit, I think, under the environment category.
And I think it's important because, you know, again, we just declared a climate emergency, and if we believe it's that important to declare an emergency as we did, and we're going to be eligible for the funding that comes from that carbon tax, and I think we want to have a sort of a more of a handle on that to be more specific. But we'll leave that with you and General Manager DeCola and everyone else to come back with it. Yeah, okay. Councillor Sandison.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So the discussion is really good, and those ideas that are coming forward are really good, but I don't necessarily think they're themes as much as their goals and objectives. And as long as we've got the higher level category that they dovetail up to, I think we're in good shape. The only thing that has occurred to me since our last meeting in terms of, our mission and our strategic themes is business process engineering. And I think that when we look at, how would I say, providing innovative, timely, and efficient service delivery in support of our vision, then that sort of, for me, opens up this business process engineering where we select, either a function or a department, and we go in and we look at all the touch points and use that as sort of a methodology to try and bring about some improvements. So that would be the only strategic theme that I think we should consider.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we do, there's a couple of, when we get to the implementation component of it, obviously the city has always, or tried to work under a corporate business planning model that, I'm not sure it's really been that successful. It's a cumbersome way to do it, and I think you're, if I can use the pun, leaning towards a more lean approach. And we've certainly had that discussion at EMT. We've had a presentation a little while ago from a group that provides training to municipalities on using the lean methodology to look at your processes and try and make them more efficient. And certainly Director Ashton and I have had some discussions around that. And we've also talked about the idea of a service delivery review, which may be something that would flow out of this look at the strategic plan, and try and identify the best way that the city can look at their business planning, and what model would work best for the corporation, and how that ties into budgeting and a review of the corporate objectives certainly at the start of every council term, and to a lesser extent yearly as you identify priorities for staff going forward. So there's lots of different ways to do that, and that would be a much bigger session than what we're looking to accomplish today with just getting through a review of the plan. But certainly I think without jumping too far ahead, that's something that I would recommend that the new council look at in terms of a full exercise to go through maybe a more detailed analysis of that part of our strategic plan. As His Worship has said, the document, I think itself is a very good document. It has a good structure to it, and I think it's still very relevant to the city, and obviously the small changes that council is looking at in it, I think are warranted, and they fit, because things do change over time. And even though the plan was done 9 years ago, I think it's still a good document, and that'll be up to the new council, but my recommendation would be the plan is still good and relevant, but there's a lot of work to do on the business side of it and the planning side of that.
Okay, anyone else? Can I ask you, we don't get a chance to have meetings where we're able to brainstorm as a group. All of our meetings under the Municipal Act are required to be in open session like this and whatnot. So, but can I ask a philosophical question to you, Mr. Beauvais? And it deals with technology and the changes in technology. And are our goals achieved through the usage or the implementation of new technology, or is new technology a goal that we would want to have as a strategic initiative? What I mean by that is, do we look at the advances in technology and ways to deliver better services and more services or new services? Do we look at as the the way to get there, or is part of what we look at as a municipality and as a corporation, saying that we want to be using technologies in order to do that? Are you understanding my question? So I'm wondering philosophically, how does technology and the usage fit into our document? For example, Councillor Sandison was talking about looking at how we're delivering things, and there have been a lot of advancements in society about that. Everything from having iPads that we're now using to track cracks on sidewalks to be able to determine what should be repaired, to our computer system, to how we issue our agendas, etc. But also, when we talk about building new subdivisions, for example, do we have technology built into our plans to ensure that there is capacity so that when our partners like Bell or Coach come in, the conduit's already run and that the subdivision is constructed with that? Or when we do a redevelopment project, so I talked about, I told you about the work at Orchard Drive. It's literally incredible, and I invite everybody to go there because the terrain, the hills, are such that it's an incredible amount of excavation they're having to do to get down to the water and to the sanitary and everything else is going on there. But are we running conduits in those areas so that in the future we can easily be able to run fiber or whatnot? And what role does technology play for the city as we look towards our strategic initiatives or our priorities?
No, that's an excellent question. I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. Philosophical, I think you want to be able to use technology as a tool. You don't want it to be the be-all, end-all. You don't want to get in a situation where the tail's wagging the dog, so to speak. You want the technology to be able to help the city address these objectives and the vision. And so when we talk about efficient and timely service, we're using technology to accomplish that. At the same time, if council doesn't make it a priority, then new development, for instance, we're not looking far enough ahead to get things like those conduits installed in new subdivisions. I think if we identify that as an objective, or at least get it into the strategic plan in some format, then that gives the direction to staff, no matter what project they're looking at. And one of the things they want to look at is, how do we deal with technology in the future? And that's not an easy thing to do, because lots of times no one knows what's going to come down the road. But certainly at this point in time, we know that it's beneficial to have conduits in new subdivisions for those utility companies to provide some of the fiber and other technologies that they want to run to every home, or at least have the option to run to every home. And I think we've done that for a number of years on new subdivisions. Maybe where we haven't probably addressed it well enough is on our own projects. So, there was lots of discussion, and I'm sure Mr. Coyle's ears are perking up back here when we were doing the downtown. That wasn't something that was looked at initially. And if I recall, the first or second phase downtown, we didn't have some of those things in the plans that needed to be in. We sort of took a step back and corrected that, and then in some of the future phases we caught those things and were able to implement them. But that's something that we need to look at all of our projects going forward. And it doesn't matter whether it's a road project, new building, for instance. You want to be able to have the ability to incorporate technology as it becomes available in the building without having to go through major capital exercise. So the police station, we heard on Saturday, there was a lot of work done to bring the technology into that building and be able to accommodate changes to that technology going forward with limited amount of work. So it's definitely an important topic that should be addressed in the document in some form.
You know, and I appreciate that it's in the mission statement, but I guess the strategic priorities are kind of like the lenses that we see everything that we do as a city. So, you know, any project that comes before the city, we look at it through all of our, you know, not just our strategic themes. And I'm just wondering that with the fact that technology now it's in every single aspect of everything we do, should it not be also one of our strategic themes that we look at everything we do from a point of view as what is the technology, how can we utilize it to A, deliver a better product, B, find efficiencies to be able to save money, you know, and C, you know, do something new, you know, something to, you know, to there. And so I don't, you know, unless anyone has a super big objection, I think maybe that would be one thing that we would suggest that you and the EMT take a look at, whether we want to have one devoted to technology. And then just coming back to what we had spoken about a few minutes ago on the environmental side, for everything that we do, you know, how does it deal with some of those things? For example, you know, naturalization, tree canopy, you know, cleaner water, cleaner outcomes, I guess, is that. You know, I spent 2 hours this morning on a strategic planning session for Alexicon, our electricity company that we're part of, and we're going through the very similar project. And of course, you know, all those items also apply to their work, and everything has to be seen through that lens. And I think it's you know, whether we're resurfacing or we're planning a brand new subdivision, all these items are important, and needs to be covered off somewhere. So.
Yeah, it may be that the, you know, one idea would be creating a theme around innovation that touches on not just technology, but other forms of innovation that the city can look at in terms of making the entire corporate operation more efficient and more responsive, and that obviously involves using technology as best as we can.
Except we've got to make sure that if we use the word innovation, we actually do something, because my experience is it's a buzzword that is used to justify doing something that is not necessarily productive. So, so if we go to that next page, then we're on implementation. And so, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so implementation is sort of a catch-all at the end of the document. So it talks about council, you know, establishing their priorities, and obviously that is something that's best done at the beginning of a term of council in terms of the higher level priorities that they want to set for themselves. And then to a lesser extent, their priorities are reviewed and sort of fine-tuned through the capital budget and the operating budget on a yearly basis. So those types of approaches are in the plan now, and as I said earlier, I don't see those changing. It's where we historically have gotten into the corporate business planning and the operational business planning that I think we haven't made a whole lot of process on those. As I say, from my viewpoint, those structures and those processes that we've attempted to use are cumbersome, and they're difficult at the departmental level to use, and to maybe better to say efficiently use, because they take a tremendous amount of time and effort that obviously takes away from doing the things that we're here to do generally. You know, I'll add the monitoring progress is an important one. It's referenced in there very quietly at the end of the document. I think there's obviously been some efforts in the past with the city attempted to use some some KPIs, some key performance indicators, and some of those were very good. Some of those were not so good. I'll say they probably weren't providing much in the way of information to staff or the public. So I think there's work to do on the monitoring side going forward. We need to come up with some better ways to monitor our progress and measure it. And I think having a proper look at the corporate business side, the planning side, and the operational business planning will provide a way to incorporate some of that monitoring that is efficient as far as the operation goes at the departmental level, but provides the information that you as council need to see that the city is making progress on our strategic objectives and on your priorities. As I say, that's a fairly significant undertaking that may best be reserved for the incoming council a year from now. And that I would see operating as you would probably bring in some outside help to look at that process and lead council through an exercise to get to something that works both from the political side and from the operational side at the departmental level.
Great. Any other questions or comments? So the idea was to jog your memories, Councillor Alsap and Feeney. You're new to you, so to make you familiar with what we had done before, and we've provided some information or some input. Mr. Beauvais will go back, incorporate it into the document, and then it will come back to us at that point. So there'll be things that will come up in our minds, but it's a good process. We've given some previous information about, particularly around destination city. Those are things that we believe, I think, very strongly in terms of making ourselves to be an attractive community, not just for new people, but also people who are here, that they want to stay here. And quality of life's been a big theme of us this term, but it fits into this. And then, should I ask if any of staff have any items they want to raise?
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah, good. So
most of EMT are here,
yeah.
I think. So
does anyone want to have anything raised while we've got council here, so that we can keep that in the back of our minds as we go forward as well? Again, when it comes back. So I'll look around the room. We'll start with Ms. Post.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing, a couple of things that I thought of going through the document is around the community health, safety, and security priority. There wasn't really a specific mention there of mental health, and I know that we have certainly been dealing with that a lot over the last couple of years, and something certainly I think should be reflected in there around supporting mental health supports. And something we've talked about around the EMT table several times over the last little while is risk. Trying to figure out what level of risk council is willing to consider when looking at specific initiatives and events in the city. And while it may not form sort of part of the strategic plan, I think it's something maybe council could think about in terms of what their tolerance for risk is when doing their operational or corporate business plans. Certainly for us in economic development, we're looking to do a lot of new and innovative and interesting things. And one of the challenges that we face is that there's an element of risk with everything we propose. And just having council give their thought to what level of risk they're willing to assume would be very helpful for us.
I'm sure, and the response, it depends, doesn't really help, right? Because I always say that it depends on what you're talking about. We'll look at it on a case-by-case basis, but it's hard to have staff work on it and bring something forward. So that's a good point. Thank you. Any other staff members? Mr. Coyle.
I just wanted to bring forward, as CAO Bove had mentioned, it's our projects in our existing infrastructure that really need conduit, things of that nature. For example, one level of downtown was missed, and so phase 2 and 3 were done. That means we can't necessarily get fiber all the way to the end. One of the great hesitations was, and I've been here a very long time, was no one wanted to come in front of council on an item that was already over budget and very contentious and say, let's add conduit. So if in the deliberation, if there is a way to say, it will be brought forward, the considerations, and then council can turn it down as is their will. It was just if there was kind of a get out of jail free card to say, here it is, like it has to be presented because it's council that absolutely wants it. I think that would be a very powerful thing. Because there are these budget, especially budget, where you want to keep it close, and that's why it doesn't come forward. It's just there's hesitation on staff, so they kind of need a method to be able to bring forward anything that that council wanted them to bring forward. So very fortunate because, and the consideration, if we had, for example, we've gone over to Pinnacle Street with conduit. Now, if we did across, but if Pinnacle Street is extended and we can put conduit and get anywhere near the water tower, huge advantage for us to have a fiber connection directly to the water tower. So there are these kind of weird IT things that we really would love to have, and especially in an older part of town. So if the document can be written that way, that it has to be presented and turned down, then that would be a very powerful thing, and I very much appreciate that.
So just, because I'm not following you 100% on that. So if we had a strategic theme of technology that we consider it in all the different operations and actions of the city, that wouldn't necessarily mean that council would approve a spending project, but we'd have to consider it.
Correct.
And so, in fairness, the conduit was the least of the problems with that downtown project, where it was set up to fail from the very beginning by improper budgeting and project planning. And so, when we look at our projects that we've done this term as a council, very different. And we have been able to consider modifications as more information came in the future. And I think it's been good, and most importantly, it stayed within what we told people we were going to be spending on a project. Mm-hmm. So we're not telling people a lowball figure, thinking that they're going to forget about it when it comes time for the project to actually be completed. So we're being, I think, more reasonable. But you can't, a reasonable council should be a priority, but it's not necessarily a strategic theme you put into your document. It's those projects will have to go to every future council, and they will make a decision as they allocate the funds. But I think if we can get it in as a strategic theme, Mr. Coyle, then you're covered off, because now, someone had to consider that technology, and they had to make the decision that that didn't go forward, and there would be an accountability.
And
that's what you're looking for, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, because again, I wasn't made aware as a member of the last council about the fact that while we had dug up all that ground, we weren't putting in conduit to allow for, cabled or a fiber to go in to help us in the future. And when it was brought up, it was, we were already putting dirt back on top, and it was too late for that. So it was caught.
Absolutely. So it isn't about what happened. It's more the direction at the time was the budget has to stay tight, and that was the focus.
Yeah. And budget should stay tight, right?
Absolutely.
But we also got to get it right the first time, and before you get into it and not try to fix it afterwards. Okay, that's good, and appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for some feedback? Okay. Well, Mr. Bove, are you satisfied with that? Do you have anything you want more discussion on, or some more input from people?
No, I think that's good. I'll maybe just touch on a couple of those comments if I could have the opportunity. Manager Post mentioned risk. That's something that keeps our insurers up at night, not to mention Matt and Carol as well. So we've had some discussions, as Karen mentioned, at EMT around risk management, and the city has looked at risk, I'll say, at a very high level. Of corporately over time, but it's becoming more and more necessary for us to pay much closer attention to risk management, and so much so that, you know, we've kicked around the idea that we probably need to have a staff position that, among other things, would do risk management for the corporation. There are many municipalities that have staff dedicated to that, and certainly our insurers have promoted that to us, I think, much more strongly than they have in the past, because insurance is a challenging field municipally right now, and it's only going to get more and more challenging, and unless we turn our mind to it much more strategically and corporately overall, we will have issues with our insurance companies and the coverage that we get and the amount we pay to get it. So it's something that I think is very important. And Mark Coyle's comments are good. I think if we have something in the plan, then staff can comfortably look at technology as part of projects, whatever it is, and put those options in front of council, so council at least sees that. I think in the past it wasn't identified as a strategic priority, so projects that probably could have benefited from looking at it, it didn't get looked at. The project moved ahead in a historic fashion, as they always have, and sometimes that technology angle gets missed. But if it's a priority, then at least it's something that will be considered, and council can make a decision on it.
All right, and if I can just ask one more thing, when EMT is sort of reviewing the revisions, if we can get an understanding, is there anything that the strategic themes ask the city to do, but to which we really shouldn't be, because they're not responsibilities of municipalities, or the Municipal Government Act has made a change or an update, and so you know, we want to, because it becomes very difficult for us as council to speak with residents and say, well, sorry, we can't do that, but then it's spoken to in our strategic planning document, right? So again, I'll just ask you to do that, where we can we can always add things in terms of how it applies, because the document is broad enough that it allows it. But sometimes we tend not to take things out of it that should be as well. So one more time, colleagues, anything else you want to add? Okay. So then thank you, Mr. Bove, for your work on that. We'll look forward to the update. So the motion will be that the strategic planning feedback review presentation by the CEO be received and directed to staff to prepare an updated strategic plan for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Confirmatory bylaw number 2021-162, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on September 20th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 20th day of September 2021. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Sandison and Councillor Alsop. All in favor?